No ways this is happening, you guys. This video is not for the faint of hearts. If you want to learn something for classical games, I have a lot of videos on my channel for that. You can just go and browse through, but this is for entertainment purposes only, and we're just having fun. Guys, the gambit you're about to see is actually new. I've never seen anyone doing this before, especially here on YouTube. So before I show you my new gambit for today, which will obviously surprise most of your opponents, let me quickly run you through the Williams Gambit once again. In the Williams Gambit, we start with f4, the bird opening, and after pawn to d5, we go pawn to e4, so that if black takes, we then develop our light squad bishop to c4, targeting the weak f7 pawn. The top played move, as you can see, is knight f6, after which we go pawn to d3. And the trick is, before black even takes back, or whatever they do next, it doesn't even matter, you just remove the move knight e2. So you're going to remove knight e2, don't even hesitate, so that ed can be met with knight e2 automatically. And obviously this will look like a mouse slip to most of your unprepared opponents. That's why you have seen d takes e2 being the top played move in the Lichess database, because people don't have patience, they don't think. And I hate such opponents who don't want to put much effort in thinking. Chess is a mind game. People must learn to be patient. So I only do these kinds of tricks to punish lazy thinkers. Of course, you can say I'm an advanced player, so should anything go wrong, even when my gambit doesn't go as planned, I can figure it out. I'm able to control the middle game and try to get back to the game. So this is the Williams Gambit, which I guess was inspired by the England Gambit trick. Now, in today's video, I have a new surprise for you guys. The reverse Williams Gambit. Oh, who am I? Where do I come from? After white plays pawn to d4, what I recommend doing is going pawn to f5 rather than going home. This is called the Dutch defense at the moment, and there is nothing wrong with it, by the way. Quite a decent opening response to d4, but the moment white plays the top played move pawn to c4, as you can see, played in over 7 million games on Lichess, this is when you go e5. And for some reason, Stockfish doesn't even think black is worse or losing completely. It gives an evaluation of plus 0.9 in favor of white. Other openings where Stockfish gives white a plus 0.9 advantage are opening responses like the Benoni defense, even the Benko Gambit. Very strong defenses even at the top level, yet Stockfish gives white a plus 1 advantage when you play the Benko Gambit or when you play the Benoni Gambit. Anyway, you can see the top played move on Lichess is d takes e5, so I don't want to make up these stuffs. After this, you simply go bishop c5, just like what you do in the Williams Gambit, and now this is when things start getting crazy. Quite alright. The move to play in this position according to Stockfish is pawn to d6, or you can play knight c6, that is fine. But bishop c5 will come as a surprise to most of your opponents. They play knight f3, as you can see in the Lichess database, and now this is when you simply go pawn to d6. At this stage of the game, this is where you want to pre-move knight e7, just like what we do in the Williams Gambit. My god, you do this in anticipation of e takes d6, which is the top played move, and you're going to see most of your opponents taking that free pawn, cause why not? After which you pre-move knight e7 or playing knight e7 in advance, cause they are going to take that as well. You can see that's the top played move, d takes e7. What's wrong with people? Immediately they do this, just know you're winning the game after bishop takes f2 check, and if king takes, you now grab a free queen on d1. I'm calling this the reverse Williams Gambit, or since it doesn't even have a name, let's just call it Caspar Williams Elbow Gambit. But before I proceed, what's wrong with your eyeballs? Can't you see the subscribe button, you guys? Simply move your elbow. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more exciting videos. Right, say what if white doesn't take on e7 right away after you pre-move knight e7, and say they play bishop g5 first. I think you're going to see this move very often, but even after this, guess what? You have an option to take back on d6. With your bishop, that's fine, or with your queen, but I want you to be crazy and try knight bc6, giving white one more chance to blunder with d takes e7 so that you can sacrifice on f2 check and win the free queen once again. I guess they are not going to do that. They'll first of all take with their bishop on e7, but you know what? Just take back with your knight. Once again, if they take, you know what to do. pap, queen takes d1, upper queen. So I guess most of your advanced opponents won't take the knight. Maybe they will play something like pawn to e3 or knight c3. By the way, queen a4 check, which is the engine's top choice in this position, can easily be met with knight c6 and you will be safe. Nevertheless, most of your opponents are going to play moves like pawn to e3, trying to shield their f2 pawn anyways. And now this is when you can simply take back with your bishop. This is what I said in the Williams Gambit, at least eyeing the h2 pawn in advance, so that if white castles short, we'll have a lead in development. I guess most people here will continue with their normal development like knight c3. What else can they do? After which you can just castle short and say after bishop d3, anything that you play from here is sensible. Bishop d7 is okay, trying to put your bishop on c6. Knight g6 is also fine, even pawn to s6. In fact, here I would play s6 just to stop knight b5. I don't want to let white harass my bishop, and I'm doing this to see where white is planning to castle, either long or short. I don't know. If they castle short at this stage, now this is when I start thinking I can even go knight g6. And look at this move, pawn to f4 is also coming. Let's say queen c2. Well, now I go knight h4, clearing the way on the king side. If knight takes, I take back with my queen, and look at this, pap. So this will force a weakness on the king side, and then I'll go queen h6. Stockfish still gives white a plus 1.5 advantage, but one that is not easy to convert at human level. Besides, how can you explain this? We still have a bishop pair. And yes, not to mention that we are down a pawn. Why? Because this is a gambit. You're supposed to be down a pawn in exchange for quick development. It's just a pawn. Anyway, once again, after d4, you just go f5. The Dutch defense. You see, the problem with pawn to e5 right away is that most people seem to know this so-called England gambit trick, so it's so predictable. That's why you want to try something else, starting with f5, and after c4 you go e5. There's no reason for white to avoid taking. They take, you go bishop c5. After knight f3, the top played move, you go pawn to d6. Again, there's no reason for white not to take on d6. They just have to take in the second pawn. And now this is when you want to go knight e7. But there's another move that you can try. Instead of pre-moving knight e7, if that seemed to be boring, try this. Go knight f6 right away. Because once again, white can take on c7 if you think about it, due to bishop takes f2. This time it's even worse, because you're way ahead in development with your king's knight. So they are not going to do that, hopefully. After you develop knight f6, one of the moves you're going to see from time to time is bishop g5. But what do you do against such useless pins? Let me show you. You have two super moves in this position. First, it's okay to take on f2 check, and then you win white's bishop like this, supported by your queen. But what I would advise to do in this position is to go knight e4, sacrificing your queen. And the plan is, if bishop takes, you simply mate white like this. So once again, this should be played in bullet chess. You see, after bishop g5 and knight e4, if white is clever enough to see this checkmate, you will see them playing bishop e3. But this is what we want. You can now take. After pawn takes, the evaluation bar is in the middle, position is equal. So in this position, you can even take on d6 with your queen. Look at white's pawn structure. Material is equal, technically speaking. Knight d7 is also playable. Knight a6 is also an interesting idea. I would love to play that. In fact, knight a6 wins, because next I might go knight b4 if white allows. Once again, pawn takes is a blunder due to queen takes d1, and after king takes, I win the rook on h1. So white is not gonna do that if they are well prepared. You will see them playing something like knight c3, I guess, but that's not good enough due to knight takes. You're just going to mess up their pawn structure like this, and sooner or later you're going to castle short. In fact, what you do when you have a lead in development or an extra pawn or an extra piece is to go for oversimplification. You simplify the game like this. Say rook d1, you just go king e7 and start taking advantage of these weaknesses. Those are just extra lessons I'm giving you, extra chess principles that you can find on my Patreon page. Alright, let's not pretend as if this dubious gambit is heaven on earth. You will still meet some skeptics that don't just accept gambits at all. For example, after c4 and pawn to e5, then this and bishop c5. Quite alright, they may play knight f3, and after d6 they don't take. This is what some of your opponents will be doing. And it is in these kinds of situations where you will see your opponents playing bishop g5, kind of an intermediate move. They know you can't play knight f6. So even though you have an option to go queen d7, you want to transpose the move order by going knight e7. This is a clever move, so that if white takes this time, you pre-move knight bc6. These things will happen over and over. What's the catch? Again, we're just sacrificing a knight so that we may be able to win that free queen like this. Anyway, if white takes with the bishop, remember this is the line that I covered a few minutes ago where you take back with your knight. Again, if pawn takes, you win the free queen. So that's how you transpose between these lines. Anyway, let's just say pawn takes, bishop c5. White doesn't even play knight f3. Instead, they go pawn to e3 right away, just shielding the f2 pawn. Well, this is when you can simply go knight c6. Just a normal developing move, wanting to get back your pawn, right? And at this point, your opponents will play something like knight f3. And what do? Just like in the Williams Gambit, you can still go queen e7. Stockfish wants you to play knight h6, by the way, so that in the near future, you put your knight on f7 or on g4, you win back that pawn like that. That's also fine. It looks like the Budapest, but queen e7 is a more straightforward move if you think about it, trying to get back your pawn. They play knight c3 most of the times, but what if they try to hold on to their extra pawn like this, knowing you can't go knight f6? Well, this is worse. You can just go pawn to d6. That's what Stockfish says. And after pawn takes, you take back with your bishop. This is equal according to Stockfish due to your rapid development. I don't know what they play here. Knight c3 may be a developing move. Now you go knight f6, chasing the queen away. Here you can even go knight e4, having a lead in development. If bishop d3, you even mess up white's pawn structure on the queen side and castle long. Let's look at one more line where white tries to completely decline your dubious gambit. Instead of pawn to c4, sometimes they might start with knight f3. By the way, I will end with the Staunton gambit because that's what is common at club level. So you need to know what to do against that. If knight f3, we can't play e5 this time because white may take back with the knight. So what I recommend to do here is to play something like knight f6, keeping up with the normal Dutch. But hey, once again, when you check the Lichess database, the top played move is c4. So you're going to get back to one of those lines. But just in case they play bishop f4, kind of the London setup, if you don't want to entertain demons, you can just go right away after that bishop and get rid of it on the next move. This is fine. Play pawn to g6, flanquero your bishop, castle short. h6 will also come later. Or if you are not comfortable with that, you can find your way to castle long. I don't care. Anyway, they are not going to play bishop f4. They play pawn to c4. Now, you know what? If you want to continue playing normal chess, it's fine. Do what masters do in this position. Play g6, flanquero your bishop, castle short, and start doing all those things that they do. Pawn to b6, bishop b7. I guess there is also pawn to e6. Sometimes you can also try d6 together with pawn to e6. But if you want to continue playing in a gambit style, try the Mujana formation, which I covered in the video that has popped up in the card above. Beginning with the move pawn to f5. In this position, things can transpose. The top played move, as you can see in the master's database, is pawn to d5. And if you watched my first tutorial on the Mujana formation, I said don't rush with pawn to d6, even though that's fine in this position. You first complete your kingside development. They'll play knight c3, you go bishop g7. If they play bishop g5, you simply castle short. Oh, what if they rush with pawn to d6? You don't even have to take. You always and always have pawn to e6. This pawn will be your defender for the rest of your life. In fact, it is very easy to capture this pawn in the near future. You just go queen b6, knight e7, bam. With queen b6, you'll also be attacking the b2 pawn if you think about it. So after castle short, your opponent won't play pawn to g6 anyways. If they play pawn to e3, you just go h6. Even pawn to d6 is okay, but h6 anyways, just trying to see what they are up to. If they take, well and good. If bishop f4, this is when you play pawn to d6 and your Mujana formation setup is complete. After h3, I love expanding on the king side. Knight bd7 is also a decent move, but for some reason I like knight s6, trying to occupy the b4 square. If pawn to a3, I have knight c7, just trying to buy some time. Knight d7 is also fine, trying to put your knight on e5. So let's go knight c7, bishop d3, and here you go pawn to b5. Yes, this looks like you're losing losing a free pawn. But that's called a clearance sacrifice. You want to put your bishop on b7. So these are strategies that I'm showing you now. If pawn to e4, you take, because at the end of the day, you're going to attack the dark squared bishop. They are not going to do that. So they'll play something like bishop c4 in this position, trying to hold on to their extra pawn. And now this is when you think of going knight d7. Don't worry about your pawn, you're going to get it back. After white castles short, all you wanted to do was to put your knight on b6, putting more pressure on this pawn and the bishop. With bishop a2, you'd love to take back that pawn, right? But white's bishop is still eyeing your king indirectly, so why not moving it out of the way first? Say queen d2, you go queen d7. With queen d7, you just want to take back this pawn, get back your pawn, and that will happen after they play rook a d1. If pawn to a4, here I would play a5 without hesitation. En passant, I take back with my rook, and there is no stopping. Here I'll take on d5, because if knight takes, I take back the knight and I'm attacking the rook. So these are technical openings that resemble the Williams Gambit if you think about it. That's why you will never go wrong with the Mojana formation. So if things don't go as planned with your reverse Williams Gambit, find a way to transpose that to the Mojana formation. You'll be okay. Last line, after d4 and f5, you will see some of your opponents playing the Staunton Gambit right away. You first of all start with f takes e4, and after knight c3, spoiler, all that your opponent is waiting for is d5. They want you to play pawn to d5, which is a blunder, so that they can go queen h5 check and win that pawn with tempo. You're going to be worse. This is the famous Staunton Gambit trap. So don't ever play pawn to d5 in the Staunton. Don't ever play pawn to d5. Or let me just say, in the Dutch defense, forget about playing pawn to d5. The move you want to play is knight f6, stopping queen h5 in advance. If they play bishop g5, once again, what did I say? Don't ever play pawn to d5, because even at this stage, pawn to d5 is bad due to bishop takes, and after you take back with your e-pawn, they still queen h5 check, and you're going to lose a pawn with many threats. So don't ever play pawn to d5 in the Dutch defense. After bishop g5, you can rely on other moves like knight c6 or pawn to c6. Even d6 is okay, if I'm not mistaken. But the main move is pawn to g6. So that if bishop takes, you take back with your e-pawn. And after knight takes e4, you simply go bishop g7. Next, you want to castle short. Bishop c4 won't stop you from castling short due to pawn to d5 this time, and you're going to win a piece. So that's how you traditionally handle the Staunton Gambit. Forget about pawn to d5 in the Staunton. Just focus on the king side. Take, develop your knight, play g6, bishop g7, and castle short. Then start thinking of doing other things like d5 or c6, d5, or whatever works for you. This video was sponsored by all of our paid members on Patreon. These are the guys who support Casper Chess financially. In return, we give them extra study materials and other premium content on Patreon to thank them in style. Not to mention that all of our patrons are at liberty to make video requests and ask any chess related questions. You can join free membership and pay later if you want through the link in the comment section down below.